Just when you think House Republicans may have finally hit rock bottom, they managed to find a lower place, and we're only 8 days into the new year. Let me explain, but brace yourselves. Despite the fact that we're once again about to face the threat of a painful and unnecessary government shutdown because they refused to honor a deal they made with the president in May of last year, despite the fact that their rapidly shrinking and unruly House majority is about to shrink to just 2 seats, despite the fact that they've given us the least productive House of Representatives in decades, despite the fact that the American people are facing real and material harm, House Republicans are focused on political stunts like impeachment. Not just baselessly impeaching President Biden, but just in the past 48 hours, it's gotten a lot worse. They've publicly announced plans to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas for a border crisis that they're also saying they publicly refuse to help the Democrats with because it's going to benefit Biden politically if they do. They've also announced that they may impeach Attorney General Merrick Garland if he doesn't arrest Hunter Biden. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert buttons before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, I have several clips to play. This is just nonsense from the Republican Party. It's back-to-back, just nonsense stories and stories of political retribution and impeachment. That's what they're focused on, impeachment. I'm going to first bring it to your attention the most recent news, which is when House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer suggests that he may impeach or attempt to impeach Attorney General Merrick Garland.
As always, and as you know, when Republicans defied lawful subpoenas from the illegitimate January 6th Select Committee, it resulted in Republicans being arrested and shackled in the middle of Reagan International Airport, for example. 2 questions to you, sir. Why the delay in holding Hunter accountable? And if the measure passes, which given the GOP's recent behavior is a big if Merrick Garland doesn't give Hunter Biden the Peter Navarro treatment, won't that be further grounds for his impeachment?
I think so. With respect to Merrick Garland, look, we know how he's treated 2 Republicans that were held in contempt of Congress. Now he's going to have an opportunity to hold the same type of justice with a Democrat that disavowed a lawful subpoena.
So they're referring, of course, to Hunter Biden. They can't stop thinking about Hunter Biden or talking about Hunter Biden. As a reminder, Hunter Biden was invited by James Comer and Jim Jordan repeatedly over the past year to either sit in a closed deposition or have a public hearing. And Hunter Biden eventually took them up on their offer and said, okay, if I have to come before you, then I will take you up on your offer, your previous multiple offers, and let's have a public hearing. That way, you can't selectively edit or release things. And we've talked about how House Republicans have failed time and time again to release full transcripts and full records of depositions, even though they claim to be interested in transparency and things like that. They actually keep most of their cards to the chest. Well, because Republicans knew that it would probably backfire for them the way that most other things have backfired for them, they instead say, no, it has to be a closed-door deposition. Maybe you'll get a public hearing afterwards. And so Hunter Biden, right or wrong, refused. Now, what they're saying is, well, when Democrats were in power and there was the House January 6th Select Committee, there were Trump advisors held in contempt. Yes, that was when they, after months and months and months, ignored congressional subpoenas, right? They didn't volunteer to testify publicly. They just flouted the subpoenas and didn't comply at all. That's a fundamental difference from another witness that Republicans have invited to testify publicly, taking them up on their offer. Jamie Raskin, the Democratic ranking member, said there's no precedent for the U.S. House of Representatives holding a private citizen in contempt of Congress who's offered to testify in public, under oath, and on a day of the committee's choosing. James Comer repeatedly urged Hunter Biden to appear at a committee hearing, and Hunter Biden agreed. Instead of taking yes for an answer, Comer has now obstructed his own hapless investigation by denying Hunter Biden the opportunity to answer the committee's questions in front of the American people and the world. Comer does not want Hunter Biden to testify in public, just as he has refused to publicly release over a dozen interview transcripts because he wants to keep up the carefully curated distortions, blatant lies, and laughable conspiracy theories that have marked this investigation. However, the facts and the evidence all show no wrongdoing and no impeachable offense by President Biden. It's absolutely correct. Now, in response to this, if you think the irony and the hypocrisy is it's bad enough under Comer, right? who again is saying, listen, if we hold Hunter Biden in contempt of Congress, again, for which there's no precedent, and Attorney General Merrick Garland refuses to arrest him the way that Donald Trump's former advisors, these weren't just private citizens. These were people who were part of the Trump administration, right? Hunter Biden's never been part of any administration. And again, never volunteered to offer in public either, or testify in public either, the way Hunter Biden has. If you think that's not bad enough, the fact that they're considering impeaching Merrick Garland over this, like they're just so zealous to do it. If you think that's bad, look at or listen to Jim Jordan, who flouted and disregarded a congressional subpoena from the January 6th Select Committee. Listen to him talk about the importance of subpoenas.
Well, if we pass it out of the committee, then pass it to the full House, which I think we can do, then it goes to the Justice Department. That'll be the Attorney General's decision whether he's going to press charges. But if he does, I mean, it could be up to a year of jail time for failing to come and comply with a deposition and for subpoena deposition to be interviewed by Congress. So this is serious stuff. And again, remember.
It's serious stuff. It's serious stuff to disregard a subpoena, to not comply with a subpoena. Well, Eric Swalwell, one of my favorite Democratic congressmen, he notes the irony. He noted the irony months ago before we got to this point.
Mr. Attorney General, my colleague just said that you should be held in contempt of Congress. And that is quite rich, because the guy who's leaving the hearing room right now, Mr. Jordan, is about 500 days into evading his subpoena. About 500 days. So if we're going to talk about contempt of Congress, let's get real. I mean, are you serious that Jim Jordan, a witness to one of the greatest crimes ever committed in America, a crime where more prosecutions have occurred than any crime committed in America, refuses to help his country, and we're going to get lectured about subpoena compliance and contempt of Congress?
And again, if you see right there, Jim Jordan's in the room. He's disregarding all of it because, of course, he's happy to play by double standards. He doesn't think that he or any other Republican are obligated to comply with subpoenas. But Hunter Biden, the president's son, is. Now, if it were Jared Kushner, right, Donald Trump's son-in-law, or Ivanka Trump, for anything like that, he would be saying the same thing. It's basically the rule for Republicans is Democrats have to comply with subpoenas. Republicans don't. It's a double standard. And again, one of the reasons why we should categorically and gleefully reject it. But it's not just Hunter Biden. It's not just Attorney General Merrick Garland. It's also Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas.
When Congress returns this week, House Republicans plan to tack another impeachment effort onto their already hefty to-do list, this time targeting Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas for the crisis at the southern border. Now, that may be proved to be easier than their goal of impeaching President Biden. My new reporting this morning, along with my colleagues Melanie Zanona and Annie Greer, outlines their game plan. Their plans: swift hearings in the Homeland Security Committee, bypassing the House Judiciary Committee, which typically deals with matters of impeachment, and going to the floor early this year. It would be historic and extremely controversial. A cabinet secretary has not been impeached since 1876. But in this election year, even swing district Republicans are getting on board. Freshman Congressman Anthony D'Esposito, who was in a district that Biden won, told me, quote, "From the far right and the Freedom Caucus to those more moderate, we've all been a part of this. I believe that the American people agree with us that Mayorkas needs to be impeached, and we need to find quality leadership to lead Homeland Security."
Now, there is no question that impeaching Alejandro Mayorkas will be much less politically costly than impeaching President Biden. It is almost certainly destined to fail once it gets to the Senate. You need a 2/3 supermajority to convict somebody of impeachment and get them removed from office. But it is much more likely, I think, to pass the House, even with these razor slim margins, than the impeachment effort against President Biden. Now, why are they doing this? Well, as Manu Raju says, because of the crisis at the border. And here's the thing. The crisis at the border is something that is a bipartisan issue and that has also spanned multiple administrations. The fact of the matter is President Bush struggled with the border, President Obama struggled with the border, even Donald Trump struggled with the border. As a matter of fact, that was a huge reason that led to a government shutdown under Trump in 2019. People say, 2020. Anybody remember what happened in that's right, a global pandemic, which brought basically the entire world to a halt. I don't think it's fair to say that the 2020 border drop in, illegal contacts at the border is because of any of Donald Trump's genius policy decisions, probably owed to the pandemic, which made it less likely for people to do anything, including try to cross the border into the United States. Because the fact of the matter is that, again, policy, resources, manpower, funding, all of these things have basically been exactly the same from Biden to Trump. The Border Patrol and Homeland Security under Alejandro Mayorkas and ultimately under President Biden, they have reported, record-breaking contacts at the border in terms of arrests. So it's not like Homeland Security is just letting them walk right in. They're arresting people in record numbers. But the fact of the matter is that whatever you think the immigration policy needs to be in the United States, the president enforces laws and can issue certain executive orders, but fundamental change must come from Congress. And President Biden and Democrats, basically since the beginning of Biden's administration, since basically the day he was inaugurated, they have proposed major border reforms, border changes, border funding. And Republicans have not been on board. And even now, they are signaling that they not only have no interest in helping, they're actively incentivized not to help because it hurts Biden politically.
Why isn't the president doing the things that he could be doing?
I think he's trying to do these things. In fact, the Senate Republicans, James Lankford of Oklahoma, is involved in real negotiations in the Senate that Lankford, Senator McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, says they're getting close. But you don't see House Republicans involved in trying to have real solutions. They're involved in that photo op theater down at the border, instead of saying, here's not only a real effort at immigration reform,
understood, but you're not answering my question.
The request from the Biden administration for money for more border agents, for asylum officers.
Right.
The Trump administration got additional supplemental funding when there was a surge at the border during their time, $4 billion. But now Johnson and the Republicans prefer to keep this issue as political theater in order to try to embarrass the White House.
He's right. That's what Juan Williams pointing out. Listen, when Donald Trump desperately needed funding to help manage a surge at the border, Congress bipartisanly worked to provide it. They met the need because even Democrats, as much as they despise Trump, would work with him in good faith, like as they did during COVID. COVID stimulus, a great example. But Republicans never, ever reciprocate. If there is any sort of domestic or international crisis under a Democrat, they will not comply. Remember when George W. Bush was president and Republicans said, you can't criticize a president during a crisis. You got to unify. You got to support the president. That's a logic that only applies to Republican presidents. If anything like 9/11 or even, a much less drastic but still serious issue at the southern border, for example, happens under a Democrat, Republicans refuse to play ball. It's a complete asymmetry of expectation that we have to break them of, that we have to reject categorically. If we have to unite under Republican presidents to manage crises, you have to unite with us under Democrat presidents to do the same. The standard must be uniform. It has to be. But they benefit from double standards. That's the only standard that a Republican Party has. But it goes beyond that still. Troy Nehls, who's a guy, he's the master of speaking the quiet part out loud. He flat out said it. He's a House Republican. He goes, let me tell you, I'm not willing to do too damn much right now to help a Democrat and to help Joe Biden's approval rating. Representative Troy Nehls of Texas said, I will not help the Democrats try to improve this man's dismal approval ratings. I'm not going to do it. And this was in response to, what are you going to do to help the president manage the border? This is where we are, folks. The Republican Party is objectively a bad faith, authoritarian cult of personality. Elected Republicans are morally and intellectually inferior to elected Democrats. They are not a good faith governing party. You can say whatever you want about Democrats. They're far from perfect. You can disagree with their policies. You can disagree with their effectiveness, but at least they try. And they even try when Republicans are in power. They helped Donald Trump pass landmark COVID stimulus relief, which he got the credit for. It was his damn name and face on the checks, right? Remember that. Democrats helped him do that because as much as they despised the man, they felt that they had an obligation to work with him in good faith. Republicans will not do that for Joe Biden, certainly not House Republicans. They want this man to fail. They hate Joe Biden more than they love their country. And I don't think they love their country that much at all. This is what the Republican Party has become in terms of at least the House of Representatives. And that's simply a fact. And anyone who says otherwise is either ignorant or a liar. Let me know what you think in the comments.